Gary Trent Jr. has completely changed Toronto's offseason plans by picking up his player option for the upcoming season. So in today's video, we need to discuss if this is good news for Raptors fans and what this might mean for other free agents like Fred VanVleet and Jakob Poeltl. Let's get into it. Welcome everybody to Amateur Hour Sports. This is the YouTube channel dedicated to Toronto Raptors coverage in videos, live streams, and shorts. If you like what you see from today's video, you want to see more content just like it, then please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Help me on my road to 15,000 subscribers, and I'll be back tomorrow for my wish list for the 2023 NBA Draft and who the Raptors should be selecting. Apologies for the delay in videos. I may have suffered a torn ACL on the weekend, so just took a couple of days to rest myself, but we have some massive news that we need to discuss. Gary Trent Jr. has picked up his player option for the 2023-2024 season, and this came out of left field. Oh my goodness, I have operated the entire season under the assumption that Gary Trent Jr. was not going to pick up this player option. Even though it was a little bit of an underwhelming season for Gary Trent, I had it in the back of my mind that, hey, maybe he takes the player option, goes for a bet on himself season to try and get a bigger extension after the fact, because likely what was coming this offseason was in the range of $20 to $22 million. Gary Trent Jr. on his player option, it's going to be worth $18.5 million. So not too much of a difference there, but overall I felt, hey, this is a guy who probably wants to lock in his money, sign the contract right now that's going to get him to his prime, at the start of his prime window, and then sign another extension at that point, which will take him throughout his entire prime, that likely being the biggest contract of his career. But out of left field, as I said, Gary Trent Jr. has taken the player option and will remain with the Toronto Raptors. Anytime I've spoken about offseason plans with the Raptors, I have operated once again with the assumption that Gary Trent Jr. is not going to be a part of it. But all of a sudden, we have some tinkering to do here, and we have some planning to do, because Gary Trent Jr. is going to be back with the team for another year, and the indication is that not only is he going to be back for another year, Gary Trent Jr. and his camp, their plans are to make sure that Trent can sign a long-term extension and remain with the team. Gary Trent did not like his early life in the NBA playing with the Portland Trail Blazers. He had a much more subdued role, but really struggled to adapt to life in the NBA. That all changed when the Raptors traded Norman Powell for Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood, and Trent has really enjoyed life in Toronto. Now, we are expecting a bit of a jump this season for the 24-year-old. We were expecting a jump, take his game to the next level, but that did not really happen. Gary Trent Jr. eventually found himself on the bench for much of this season, operating as a sixth man, which, based on the way that he plays, really does fit his sort of play style, but he will likely be looking to take on more, and he's going to be looking to take on more with a different coach. Dark Rajakovic has replaced Nick Nurse. Maybe Gary Trent and Nick Nurse didn't quite see eye to eye. Nick Nurse had called out Gary Trent previously in the media as a result of maybe not really committing to the team, not fully committing to the team, and maybe not always being there from a commitment level, especially on the defensive end of the court. But Trent is a guy who can score on multiple levels, does really well coming off of dribble handoffs, and now with the Raptors running a much more tactical offensive scheme, this could really allow Gary Trent to blossom even further in a Raptors uniform. So as far as the news here, if this is good or bad news, Raptors obviously want a little bit of cap space. Obviously, when we want to bring in some new players, we want to kind of adjust the team, but this can only be good news here. This can only be good news because this is an asset that you have now retained for another season, and it looks like it's going to be retained for eventually quite a few more years after the fact. Now, we traded Norman Powell for Gary Trent. It seemed like a really good trade after a year. Now we're getting to the point where maybe it wasn't a good trade, but the fact that Gary Trent is going to remain here long term and it's seemingly on an affordable contract, it seems like that trade was firmly a win for Masai Ujiri and the Raptors management. Having the asset retained for another year as well and for the future is just going to allow the Raptors to have so much more flexibility with Gary Trent. If he doesn't want to extend long-term with the Raptors, then there's an opportunity to flip him at the trade deadline. If he does want to stay with the Raptors long-term, then hey, there's an opportunity to keep this player on your team and allow him to grow further because he is a young player and he does have an even brighter future ahead of him. But what does this mean for other players for the Raptors? Because it seemed like Gary Trent Jr.'s contract was going to come off the books. Therefore, there was going to be more space to sign Jakob Poeltl, who's a free agent, and Fred VanVleet, who has already committed to being a free agent by declining his player option. Now, there's possibilities of sign and trade for Fred VanVleet. There's possibilities of him walking for free. There's also possibilities of him just remaining with the team. But like I said, this really throws a wrench in the side of what the Raptors were planning here, because the Raptors really can't afford to bring back all three of these players unless they maneuver the cap space in some other ways. The Raptors will be above the tax line if they were to bring back Jakob Poeltl on his projected salary, and if they brought back Fred VanVleet on his projected salary. So bringing the players back puts us over the cap, puts us in the tax, and for a team that is likely just going to be competing for a playoff spot this upcoming season, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to be a tax-paying team. And even if you want to go in a different direction, have the Raptors focus on development and fall back a little bit, it really doesn't make sense to being a tax team. So all signs are indicating here that the money is just not going to be there for Fred VanVleet to remain on this team. And the money may not even be there to be able to pull off a sign and trade. Certainly stuff is possible in these regards and in these endeavors, but signing and trading Fred VanVleet is going to be a little bit more difficult now for the Raptors, but I think all signs at this point are pointing towards a separation between the Raptors and VanVleet. Now, you might be watching this celebrating by that comment. You might be watching this being a little bit upset. I'm open to the possibility of that happening. At the end of the day, I knew it was going to be very difficult to retain all three of these players, but Fred VanVleet's going to ask for a lot of money. Even if he does walk for free, it's not the end of the world as long as you keep 2 out of 3 of those free agents. But that's where some further problems can lie here. Gary Trent Jr. is going to be here, kind of predicting Fred VanVleet's going to be gone. But what if you also can't keep a hold of Jakob Poeltl? Now, I've been operating under the assumption that Gary Trent Jr. was going to not take his player option, was going to reject his player option and become a free agent. And obviously, I was wrong about that. But I've also been operating under the assumption that Jakob Poeltl would sign an extension with the team and would remain with the team, but that is definitely not a guarantee, nor is it a formality at this point. The saying goes, when you assume something, it makes an ass out of you and me. And potentially we could be heading in that direction with Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl is a free agent, therefore has the right to go anywhere. He certainly would have the understanding the Raptors traded from the deadline, likely wanting him to be a part of the team for the foreseeable future, but Jakob Poeltl has made it clear that he does not want to be part of a rebuilding project, and maybe that also means he doesn't want to be a part of a retooling project. But with the Raptors having OG on the team already, Gary Trent will be on the team, the 13th overall pick will be on the team, along with, hopefully, Jakob Poeltl. Regardless if Siakam does get traded, I don't even think he's going to get traded. I think this team is going to be competitive enough regardless that Jakob Poeltl is going to see this as a fit where he can be on a winning team for this upcoming season. In the last 10 years, the Raptors have only had one losing season, and that is a pretty remarkable record, especially considering where the Raptors were at the start of that decade of a span of time. But for Jakob Poeltl, I still think he's going to resign. I still think they're going to make it happen. I still think the Raptors are going to commit quite a bit to this core, maybe not to Fred VanVleet anymore, and if all that is in place, I still feel confident that Jakob Poeltl is going to re-sign, but that disaster situation still sits in the back of my mind. Like, it could happen. So definitely have to brace ourselves for that. But I think that this Gary Trent situation opens up a lot of great options here. Unfortunately, it does seem like it is the demise of Fred VanVleet's time in Toronto, but there is a great opportunity in tomorrow's NBA draft to find a point guard. Big fan of Cason Wallace. Big fan of Kobe Buffkin. They can slot right into that starting point guard slot. And I think the Raptors could really, really build for the future and for the present with those players in that position. But we'll go through my full NBA wish list for the Raptors as we get towards tomorrow's NBA draft. But what do you make of Gary Trent Jr.'s contract situation, him signing? Do you think it's good or do you think it's bad for the Raptors? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. If you guys did enjoy this video, I am battling through a lot of knee pain right now, so a like would very greatly be appreciated. And also make sure you're subscribed to Amateur Sports so you don't miss out on tomorrow's NBA draft wishes and you don't miss out on my first reactions to whoever the Raptors pick with that 13th overall selection. I'm excited to see who Adam Silver announces is going to be joining the Toronto Raptors. I hope you are as well. I'll have a live stream as well coming tomorrow, so we'll see you there, and I'll see you again next time for another video.